Hello, everybody, and welcome to the November 13th, 2018 edition of the Ephrom Josine Show. I am your host, Ephrom Josine, and I'm just going to be honest, guys. I saw this story just after I recorded last night, and I was seeing red. Anyway, if you do not follow Ephrom Josine at blogspot.com, then you would not know, which is my blog for the record, and you wouldn't know that yesterday I published a column called The Greatest Pro-Choice Ad of All Time, where I talked about an ad that's not from Planned Parenthood, for the record. There's a lot of claims that it is. It's not. It's from a group of people called the Agenda Project. I couldn't pronounce that for a minute for some reason. And it was on, an ad that basically just pointed out that, hey, if you want children to usually be loved, to usually be wanted, you should therefore be pro-choice. Well, live action didn't like that very much, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something else that I'm reading from live action, specifically to not look biased, so that way these are the people who are in favor of it. This is from live action. People with Down syndrome apply to be the first humans on endangered species list. You gotta love when people accidentally declare themselves different species. Now, look, there are about a million different jokes I could make out of this, most notably with who the pro-life movement is appealing to. But those would be awful, so I'm not going to. And to be clear, I do not support, for instance, calling people with Down syndrome slurs or things like that. A newly released video from the Canadian Down Syndrome Society has released a video. You're bad at grammar. Pointing out how worldwide people with Down syndrome are in danger of becoming extinct. Well, yeah, so are people who die of smallpox or polio. In fact, I think people with polio are extinct in the US. Why are they on the list? So are people with very, very severe forms of things like syphilis or chlamydia, thanks to antibiotics. So are people who die from things that we've solved with penicillin. Should they be on the list now? I understand this may seem like a silly argument. I'm just asking, why is that a bad thing? So people with this condition are speaking out, demanding better treatment and an end to eugenics, Fun fact, by the way, they talk about all the time how abortion has been used for eugenics purposes. But first off, they never talk about the fact that Margaret Sanger became open Planned Parenthood and became supportive of abortion rights because she saw her mother's health deteriorate after she had, I think it was over 10 miscarriages. And now I just point to the eugenics stuff. But they also never talk about how lack of abortion has been used in eugenics before. For instance, in Nazi Germany, Aryan women were not allowed to get abortions. So they that has left their numbers dwindling. The CDSS notes on its campaign website that, quote, by the International Union of the Conservation of Nature's Own Criteria, the Down syndrome community qualifies as endangered in most parts of the world. So are babies who are born critically underweight. So are babies born in global poverty. They're becoming extinct. Are we supposed to now consider them endangered species? I'm steaming reading this, honestly. The CDSS has applied, quote, for the inclusion of people with Down syndrome as an endangered subspecies. Their words, not mine. or subpopulation, again, their words, not mine, of Homo sapiens to the IUCN's red list of threatened species. Remember back during the gay marriage debate when it was always, oh, they're just looking for extra rights. This is literally a group of people who wants to basically separate from the human species to be on their own special list. How is this not extra rights? In most of the U.S., you can terminate a pregnancy for basically any other reason. But in several states, Ohio for instance, you aren't allowed to terminate a pregnancy if the fetus has Down syndrome. This is kind of eugenics, just in the opposite direction. The Down syndrome master race may actually be a thing now. Getting more babies to be born, getting more people that have Down syndrome to own the libs. We have been owned, I'm sorry. If I tell you we've been owned, will you stop? In their application, CDSS notes some disturbing statistics. Thanks to high abortion rates, which in some countries are in excess of over 90%, I thought that the US was the only place with these super liberal abortion laws. Now all of a sudden, no, everywhere has these liberal abortion laws. You ever notice that? Down syndrome births are 50% lower than projected. Cry me a river. That's honest to God my only response. With births actually falling in countries like Denmark. I thought Denmark had these super conservative abortion laws again. Again, I'm just hearing what I've heard. I don't even know if this is true. That's been their argument for years. That the U.S. is special and that enlightened Europeans who we can't copy the healthcare system of. We cannot have universal healthcare. We can't have universal birth, though. That's going to happen no matter what. And for that matter, I think this entire article shows one of the main contradictions of the pro-life movement. Women who have abortions are sluts, whores, baby killers, and murderers, and therefore should be parents. Should basically just be their slogan. Over 65% of people with this condition are out of the workplace. Citation needed. And a sizable minority live in poverty. You just said minority. Many do not have access to adequate education or proper housing. That's because they're unemployed. And unfortunately, automation is actually kind of screwing out the lower wage, lower skilled jobs that people with Down syndrome typically took. Now, I'm not saying they can't have these high careers. I'm just saying typically they have to rely on these smaller time things. And they're happy doing it, don't get me wrong. They love doing it. These are just the facts. And disturbingly, animal welfare organizations receive 90% more funding and resources than Down syndrome organizations do in North America. I do actually disagree with that, for the record. In Iceland, the abortion rate for preborn babies with the condition is effectively 100%. Notice the effectively, not actually 100%, but, basically 100%. I'm also going to point this out real quick. Their statistics don't make any sense. Here's what they said. Iceland was at a different article about Iceland. Iceland was a population of 330,000, sees only about 2 children a year born with Down syndrome, CBS reports. Now in the United States, about 6,000 babies are born annually with Down syndrome. Now, they have about 100 times the population. So basically, if I did my math correct, it would be either, let me think, a third to a 30th of the U.S. when adjusted per capita. Wah, wah. 60 Minutes Australia gave a glowing review test that they boasted boasted could, quote, effectively end Down syndrome in Australia, while in the Netherlands, parents are told they have a, quote, moral duty to abort children with the condition. Okay, I'll give you that. That's a little creepy. You know, I am pro-choice, but I do think that if you're telling women it's your moral duty to have an abortion, that does kind of cross a line. In the United Kingdom, politicians have repeatedly called for people to be forcefully aborted or, quote, put down after birth. That one just sounds like you're quote mining. I'm sorry. In the United States, 1 in 4 women report being pressured to have an abortion after parental diagnosis. Well, wait, what do you mean by pressured? Do you mean like a friend recommended it or a doctor asked if you wanted it? Because that's their job. People with Down syndrome are, in fact, in danger of extinction. And why? Simply because they are different. Oh my god, let's go back to the examples I gave earlier. People with polio are on the verge of extinction. Why? Because they're different. This decision will hopefully call attention to the crisis and help bring an end to this genocide. Oh, God. This is one of the worst things I've ever read. And I normally do an op-ed after that, but that was an op-ed. That was an op-ed. Here are some comments just for fun. I could not find a petition on the site linked here. Would someone please post a link in here in the comments? Congratulations, live action. You can't find your petition. We have come far enough to see that exterminating animals that can harm people is wrong. Do you want me to get out the burger again? No longer are people paid for turning in snake heads or rattlesnake tails. Yes, they are. That's called poaching. Actually, and trophy hunting for that matter, which is a very good boon for African economies. Yet, instead, we exterminate Down syndrome folks. That's how it works, apparently. I've just imagined a poacher. I'll tell you what I go after. Fetuses with Down syndrome. And boast about it as a, quote, great idea. No one actually does that. We have replaced one wrong with an even greater one. This is not progress at all. It is descension into barbarity. With this in mind, Down folks definitely need to put on the endangered list as animals are. So you're calling them animals. Congratulations. Here is a funny one I like. So forcing women to give birth to babies they don't want is the answer. This is on the same article for the record. No, teaching people to remain chaste until marriage is the answer. Because that's how it works. A lot of people don't know this, but your kid can only have Down syndrome if you have sex outside of marriage. I made that up. In today's society, there is no value in chastity, and in movies, books, ads, billboards, those are the same thing, etc. Having sex before marriage is seen as normal and okay because there are no consequences to their actions. And why does it matter? If there aren't any consequences, what? Your sentence structure is awful. Just awful. Or responsibility that comes with it. Yes, if we made abortions illegal, unsafe one. And by the way, that's the goal here. It's not just to, oh, we're only helping people with Down syndrome. It's to make abortion illegal. That's their goal. Unsafe ones would probably happen. But imagine if we stress the importance of chastity until marriage. Well, then people would have sex anyway. Because that's kind of in biology. And then a woman would get pregnant, and because it's a state issue now, which is what happens when you don't have the federal government say it's legal. There'd probably be a court case, and we'd call this court case something like maybe Roe v. Wade, and we determine, no, you just can't make it illegal statewide. Wait a minute. Putting it in books, movies, ads, billboards, etc. How would that work is what I want to know. Just on an advertisement, buy our soda. Also, don't have sex until marriage. This is just so funny in my... Maybe if we stress it to the public like we stress having sex. We don't. There would be no reason for an abortion anyways. We have solved all the world's problems. We are not saying that no one should have a right to choose. We are saying humanity is making humanity extinct as opposed to your solution, which would actually probably result in less population, because then how are you going to pressure all the single mothers into not having abortions and therefore have more children? You see? We are saying humanity is killing humanity so much that we now have to call a special, beautiful portion of humanity endangered because someone doesn't want to take care of a person. Yeah, there are a lot of people who say already have enough kids as it is, or live in poverty and can't afford a special needs kid. You're kind of a jerk, honestly. That's the nice way of putting it. This is a Christian website, so I'm not going to be mean to you. Don't worry. We are saying humanity is murdering human children. No matter if someone has a disease or not, they are human. Yes, life will be harder on them, but that's more of a reason to stand with them and show unending support. Thoughts and prayers with the victims. Not saying we as fellow humans think you shouldn't have to deal with it, so instead we are going to kill you. You're awful at grammar. I just want you to know that. That's wrong, because like it or not, people without Down syndrome get picked on too. I don't even get the moral here. Jesus Christ, classy gal. You're... My God. I'm Ephrom, and good night.